Hello, I'm Shalvi Mehta and I'm going to take the webinar to the topic of practical considerations for remote hearings. Uh, I thought I'd be productive during the lockdown part, and I thought I'd write something and I'll think about what legal implications we're going to have as lawyers. So the last I wrote about was the urgent need to have an ODR platform in India and how to shift commercial disputes to be able to resolve them through ODR. While I did raise certain questions in that article as well, it brought me to many practical considerations for remote hearings in general. We're not talking about only ODR, we're also in general, whether these hearings are on an ODR platform or are e-courts hearing the urgent reliefs. There are many loopholes that the Indian legal system is going through currently. And I will try and throw light on some of them this evening. And towards the end, I'll open the floor for questions for all of you to ask, and I hope that works. Before that, I think Ujjwal is better in a position if someone has any questions. How do they do that? Ujjwal, you can just explain them that. Ujjwal, you're muted.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. So I'll request everyone to, if you have any question, just write it in the chat box. And please, I would request don't interrupt, ma'am, in between. And you can write the questions directly in the chat box. We'll take them in the end of the session. Thank you.
Yes. So let's begin. All of us know we're stuck in an unfamiliar, unprecedented situation with coronavirus wreaking hell in all of our lives. We all know that we're far from finding a solution to this problem, even if hypothetically and focusing on a very, very distant silver lining. The lockdown is lifted on 3rd May 2020. We will still have to by ourselves practice social distancing, which ideally not be exposed to public places or places where there are more than say 4 people. So it's accepting this reality. We all know it is going to be difficult for courts to function normally for a long time now, or even attend hearings in general, even whether it is arbitration hearings or any other hearings. And from what I can see already, count the time at least till end of June for courts or schools or educational institutions or any other places where there are a lot of people at once. I don't think they'll open by June. So we're at the mercy of technology, online dispute resolution, and remote hearings to survive and try and normalize the court hearings as much as possible. We're also far from being good and efficient at remote hearings, I feel, or using online dispute resolution effectively. So today I'm going to talk about exactly that and what are the practicalities that we need to take into consideration for remote hearings. And these hearings can be any platform. Let me start by addressing the technical considerations. Firstly, internet bandwidth. Like Ujjwal, just introduced all of you and introduced me and asked you guys to just shut videos so that we don't and mute yourselves and stop your video so that we don't have we have enough bandwidth to deal with this webinar. First and foremost hindrance, especially in India, will be the internet bandwidth. We're a country which doesn't have 5G yet. Efforts are being made to reach there, but we currently do not enjoy 5G services. Now, I'm no engineer, I don't have a technical background, but we're far from having better internet bandwidth than most countries. I'm hearing of news these days where parents who are working from home also have children who are attending online schools. So both of them are using the internet, and if someone wants to be on a video call using the same wireless internet, it becomes difficult for them. Of course, we have our mobile phones and we have our reduce the quality of streaming services to minimum for people using mobile phones. So amidst lockdown, at least we're all hooked on the internet. All of us are going to have to be dealing with limited sources. I will give you another example. I was recently attending a webinar hosted by SIAC talking about making the shift to online arbitration. The irony here is, and I'll tell you what happens, a funny incident, that the moderator himself had to leave the session midway because of internet connectivity issues. Now, just imagine the contrasting nature of the system wherein you're talking about online recourse of arbitration and dispute resolution, but you don't even have the means to explain the instructions online because all of us deal with bad internet issues. In the Indian context, where most of the nation is comprised of people in middle class and upper middle class strata of society, it is very difficult to suddenly find the technology in order to suffice everybody's needs. Internet, as we know, is a must to hold video conferencing, and we need urgent attention towards that. Giving my own example again, because I'm talking today, before starting the video call, I made sure I told my family to not use the Wi-Fi and switch to their mobile hotspot so that there are no interruptions here in our video chat. There'll be a lot of compromises when it comes to internet availability, similarly, and easy, efficient usability in India. So this is one of the core areas that we definitely need to work on, or we should preempt having issues on during remote hearings. Internet bandwidth being one. Second, if I move on to, is technological adeptness. When it comes to technological adeptness, instances of online court hearings for urgent matters that we are currently going through, they are taking place. These will serve as perfect examples. Now, judges mostly are still coming to the court premises in order to attend the hearings, at least most places. Now, we have shifted a lot of them to be able to do that from the comfortable corners of their house. But we have seen very many pictures also, Supreme Court judges attending to video conferencing hearings. This move still puts them in danger, considering the phase where India is with respect to COVID-19. And even the Supreme Court notification and guidelines on video conferencing, it also provides for infrastructure in the Supreme Court for parties and their advocates to utilize if they don't, say, own, or they don't have a laptop or a mobile phone or a tablet to use. Of course, social distancing is maintained and the parties and advocates are in a different room, whereas the judges are in a separate room. But that still puts them in danger because they have to travel from far off places to reach the Supreme Court they are living in, whether those conditions are sanitary or not. All of these issues are still prevalent, and more are not technologically adept to hear matters from the comfortable corners of their home, which is why all courts have this facility, to let parties come to the court premises and then attend hearings, because they're not technologically adept. Either they don't have the infrastructure, or they're not absolutely convinced of the fact that they will be able to handle the video conferencing and the applications by themselves without any help. So if I give another example, is the situation of the Gujarat High Court, wherein sanitization tunnels have been erected so that people who need to come to court to facilitate the online hearings can do so without worry. Technological inability is one of the biggest obstructions that we're going to face for remote hearings. India is inherently not the most technologically adept country, to be honest, and hence that is going to be hindrance for most remote hearings, and I believe all of us know that. I'm going to now give another example, which might be a generalization, and please don't take it otherwise, but most judges or adjudicators in a court hearing, arbitration or mediation, they're all generally beyond the age group of 40. And in our profession, the grayer the hair, the more knowledge you have is what is the norm, which is understandable, agreeable to the extent that experience comes with age. But which is why people appoint generally retired judges for the ADR hearings as well. Now, given a specific age group, it is not very easy for them to learn to use technology suddenly and very efficiently. And that should be a big lacuna. I'll give you an example of my own father, he was not able to adapt to technology that quickly. So it shall be a big lacuna in my understanding. And in such a short time, to not only be able to learn the technology, but then also be able to master it and use it efficiently, that is going to be a huge task. Another thing is, most lawyers use stenographers and they do not type or draft applications by themselves. So it is only people currently, say, in their 30s and the generation after that, who are able to draft and type on their own devices. If you look at any well-established lawyer in their 40s and beyond, and I apologize extremely in advance for the generalization, but I'm pretty sure that all of them use stenographers. And I've seen that, I've experienced that myself. Where do we get the stenographers in a complete lockdown state for e-filing? Where do we get that? And how do we manage e-filing? I've also heard complaints with regards to uploading the applications or petitions via e-filing, and that the portal does not provide with ample memory strength. I recently read in an article where people were complaining that they have at least Supreme Court has a cap of 2 MB or 5 MB files, and sometimes that may be less for voluminous records. And especially currently, we're only listening to PILs or say criminal matters, which might require voluminous records, and those annexures are not enough to be uploaded within a 2 MB or 5 MB limit. I suggest we take the RERA example where all complaints and applications are made online on their portal. They have the infrastructure where you mention a brief in so many words about every document that they're uploading. Same thing can be taken up with e-filing courts as well, so that the documents don't become bulky for the judges to refer to, and they can skim through the less relevant ones. Coming back to, say, being technologically sound and able to adapt to the changing times, this way of change, I don't think should be resisted. I empathize with the generation of lawyers, judges, arbitrators, mediators who have never used technology and who will have to now float above the pressure created by the situation and be able to learn afresh. While that is also a rosy picture I've painted, more often than not, people will have to make real efforts to be able to accept and adapt to this change, or learn how to use the computer, for example. And that is from scratch. We are talking about people who can easily afford learning. Now, this is also another side of the story. What about people with minimum resources who would not be able to even afford the usage of technology? That is also a question left unanswered. So we need approach here to make the entire legal community adapt to technological needs that we are facing currently. While I do not have an absolute answer for this, but I definitely can point out that this is the biggest lacuna that we will face. Also going ahead with, next I come to the choice of platform. Choosing the correct platform is also a consideration for remote hearings, as confidentiality plays a huge role for any type of dispute resolution process. Now, all of us have heard and read about what happened to Zoom. Government of India has now come up with guidelines even to make sure that even if we use Zoom, then we must ensure taking certain preventive steps so that we do not falter or get our accounts hacked when we are using Zoom, or we don't have a meeting hacked and random people onto our meeting asking random questions. That also recently happened to a university in Gujarat itself. So choice of platform is one of the most sensitive considerations to be made while going for remote hearings. Google Meet, I believe, is one of the better alternatives. However, I say so when I'm being able to speak to you and reach all of you while using Zoom myself. So I should be the last one complaining, but this is a relevant, choice of platform is very relevant currently in the current scenario. Having said all of this, we still have to be very careful in making a proper, appropriate choice for a platform, taking in mind the safety, security, confidentiality, all of these are important equally. Supreme Court, I believe, uses this app called Video for the video conferencing and court hearings. It's spelled as VIDYO. They've also, I think the government has also come up with another app called Namaste, if I'm not wrong. I might be wrong in the name. So there are applications, but we need more innovation with respect to this, or we need to make, because everybody is now more or less has adapted to Zoom, then we need to make Zoom safer. How and where and why is what is the questions that we're left unanswered, but here's hoping. There is also another part of confidentiality wherein people remotely attending hearings have been caught to record them on their phones. Now, we've heard many cases in the recent times where this was being done, and which is an absolute breach of confidentiality, especially in commercial matters. Imagine a very sensitive commercial, say, international commercial arbitration, and someone is actually recording all the pleadings, all the oral hearings, and that can be used to, defame someone or in any other way. You never know. So that is a big part of confidentiality that we need to adhere to. So we need to, bind people by an oath, or we need another way to ensure that nobody misuses our grave need to use technology right now. So these are a few technical considerations that come on the top of my mind. Before I go to consideration that a lawyer representing a client in a hearing have to be, have to take into consideration. Before that, I think I've received some chat, so let's see what questions you have. Ujjwal, can you help me with that if you have any relevant questions to this topic, or else I'll move ahead. Ujjwal, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am,
Yes,
I think the questions have been sent directly to you, I guess.
Okay, to my chat too only, right?
Yeah, so you can
Okay,
take them by yourself.
Okay, there's a question from Anshika Tiwari which says, we can continue using online mechanism in the courts after lockdown also by taking baby steps so that they can adapt. But Anshika, that is absolutely right, and I absolutely propagate that. We need to use technology more. We need to use online mechanism more, and this will reduce the burden on the courts that you generally have. I am an absolute advocate for online dispute resolution as well. Just shift mostly all commercial disputes to our ODR, and that'd be a big change. But this is all wishful thinking, right? We need to make sure that technically we are sound, we have the absolute infrastructure, and then we can go ahead with that. But these are suggestions that I myself make, I advocate as well, and I absolutely take Anshika's suggestion I take it to be absolutely appropriate. There's also a question from Sakshi. Hello, Shalvi. Thank you so much for an insightful session. I've been wondering about how cooperative people can be in an online arbitration proceeding, especially internet, when all parties are in different time zones. Sakshi, again, very good question. This has happened to me very recently. So I was attending an SIC hearing last night, because that was a test hearing, which the actual procedural hearing was in today, this afternoon. But the test hearing, because there were certain people who were not able to attend at a particular time, so we had to take the test hearing at a very at late night, because someone from England was also coming and was not fine with the timings. So yeah, time zones are so here we were cooperative about it, and we have time zones are one of these important things that we have to take into consideration. We have to be cooperative because parties are sitting out of different places, and you can't be stuck up on the fact that, okay, this time is my dinner time and I will not be cooperative. You just can't do that. So yes, I hope and I pray that everybody is able to be cooperative, be more mindful of each other's time zones, and be able to decide an appropriate time where we can conduct hearings online, especially when it comes to international parties sitting out of different places. And sometimes, see, we have to be very respectful towards the arbitrators always. And sometimes it is their request to, accommodate certain different timelines or time zones, and we have to let it go, because it's not an everyday function. Hearings will max go on for 5 to 7 days, and we will have to be cooperative. All of us will have to. That is true. We can't be stuck up on that. We can't be like how we are during courts, that no, I will not agree for a joint adjournment. We can't do that here. Anybody else has questions? I think I got these two. I received these two. So I'm going ahead, Ujjwal.
Yes.
Are there any questions?
No, ma'am, you may go ahead, please.
Okay. So what we discussed already were a few technical considerations that came on the top of my mind. I now wish to touch upon considerations that a lawyer representing a client in a hearing, or a counsel, as we call them, should take into account before attending a remote hearing. These are just small points that we need to consider. Foremost thing is a decorum. Counsel needs to make sure to consider this working from home. Online hearing is just as important as the face-to-face personal appearance court hearing. Formal clothes and attire are not excusable. You have to wear formal clothes. I mean, we all have read about how lawyers were not adhering to the code of conduct, when all the courts decided to go for virtual hearings. And formal dressing was not, a part of the hearing. And while appearing for online hearings, how could you not, dress formally, and we need to make sure to consider this with extreme sincerity. You have to, it is as much as a face-to-face hearing, and we need to adhere to all the code of conduct that we do during the court appearances as well. So again, absolute importance should now be given to the written submissions, I feel. In India especially, I've noticed more weightage is given to oral advocacy in comparison to sound legal drafting. So when it comes to remote hearings, technical glitches are possible to occur that we've already discussed. And so the reliance on written statements is bound to increase. Now we have fast track arbitrations already in place, wherein people tend to only rely on written submissions, and oral hearings are seldom conducted. And with the world going online and relying more on online hearings, it would be preferable for a lot of smaller disputes to adopt fast track arbitrations with focus only on the written submissions, so that we can at least avoid whatever technological mishaps we can. We also need to make sure that our drafting is top-notch and perfect without any loopholes. So over-the-counter citing of case laws and introducing new precedents that at the time of the hearing will obviously not be allowed anymore. That is a practice that we've been going through for decades in courts. But so you have to, that will not be allowed anymore because we don't have an over-the-counter mechanism in online or virtual hearings. So you have to carefully draft the written submissions to ensure that everything needed has been included and it's carefully boarded as well. You've taken into consideration all points of law, all precedents, so that at the last moment you do not come up with something that you could have taken to advantage during your hearing and weren't able to because it was a virtual hearing. Secondly, with respect to oral advocacy, we Indians have the habit of splurging on oral arguments going on for days and days. With remote hearings, we will have to cut short the explanation of each and every point and go ahead with the assumption that whoever the adjudicator is, or the mediator, the arbitrator, the judge, has read all the files thoroughly, and that explanation on facts and smaller points is not required. Counsel will also need to be brief and crisp with their arguments, I feel. All the while making oral advocacy in remote hearings is, which is why I feel is going to be tricky and not the exact same that happens in face-to-face hearings, especially for the ones who are used to court hearings. Let's keep arbitration aside, but the ones who are used to court hearings, oral advocacy is going to be a change for them for sure. Another point that I need to make here is coupled up with my earlier technical consideration of being technologically sound. Your referencing of the written material, like oftentimes you will have to take the judges through the written material to be difficult for us. You need to be technologically adept for that. So coming to the consideration will be documents and sharing the screen for pointing out the appropriate para or lines. In Zoom and most other video conferencing apps, we have the option to share screen and show particular documents to the people in the meeting. So one has to be mindful that you're ready with all the documentation and files open in the background, so you can quickly show them across to the judges or arbitrators in the meeting. It again gets us back to the point of how technologically adept you are to be able to quickly shuffle between these screens and multitask, and all of that needs to be there. Most senior counsels I've observed during oral advocacy in courts and even in arbitrations, in fact, they're used to their juniors handing out files and case laws to them. While they're arguing, it is highly possible that the same treatment may not be available to them in remote hearings, as everyone will be practicing social distancing and each man will be left to their own mercy. So counsels themselves have to be as aware and adaptive to technology for being able to articulate in their oral advocacy, because there will be nobody who will come and hand out a document to them. They have to be prepared by themselves. So it is interrelated to how well you're able to operate the video application you're using as well, or how easily you're able to operate technology in general. Another consideration which is connected to this is the entire concept of instructing counsels and arguing counsels. That will vanish, or it will be extremely difficult for that to still stand true. when it comes to remote hearings, because the instructing counsel cannot discreetly guide or suggest something to the arguing counsel during the hearing, which we generally happens during arbitrations, mediations, during court hearings as well. But they normally would, if they are face to face, normally you would easily be able to instruct them. But how do you do that while you are in a virtual hearing? And this applies to all forms of dispute resolution for that matter. And it will also come down to the fact that except for expertise, there will be just as even preparation by all parties concerned will be increased because of the inability of assistance. As simple as that. There will be no assistance to them during the hearing, or if they have to take instructions, they might have to put themselves on pause or ask time or seek time from the judges or the arbitrators or whoever the adjudicator is. Seek time and take instructions mid hearings. So your preparedness will be absolutely visible. And another thing, which is a very technical thing here, is so will be your expressions. Now, unlike the courts or the arbitrations, there will not be a dais or there will be no distance between you and the judges. So your face will be visible and flashing on the screens, and the judges will be able to read each and every one of your expressions. So you need to be sure to not give away your bluntness or any of your overt expressions, even when you're not in the courtroom, because utmost respect needs to be paid to the judges. So you have to be very careful about expressing the way you do, about not letting go. There's one more thing that I thought is a consideration for counsels, which is witness examination. Now that is one of the more trickier ones. Technological availability at the witness's end and his ability to use that technology is one of the most important questions to consider. Being able to prepare the witness well in advance, to be able to show him the relevant documents, it's all going to be tough. Especially when it comes to doing all of this on video call and not being able to meet face to face. So oftentimes our entire cases depend on witness testimony. So, and if you're not able to prepare the witness well, or the witness is not able to attend to technology well, then that can pose as a big hindrance. Again, we will be back on relying to the written witness statements more than the oral testimony because of the reasons I already mentioned. So again, importance of drafting a witness statement is going to be paramount here rather than the witness testimony, oral witness testimony. It is not like Indian courts. Yeah, Ujjwal, you've unmuted yourself. Is there a question?
Just not a question, ma'am, but I just want to urge to everyone that please unmute yourself and please do not turn your camera on. Please. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, you may continue.
Okay. Where were we? I have forgotten. Witness testimony. Yes. It is not like Indian courts have never taken witness testimony through video conferencing. The most famous case is that of David Headley giving his testimony through video conferencing, as he was currently in an American prison. But he was an accomplice in the 26/11 terror attacks, all of us know. His testimony was taken by the Tada court through video conferencing. Now, that was made possible because the American prison had the technology available. Do we think all the other prisoners, all the other witnesses will have the technology available to them, or will be that adaptive to technology, or will have resources to get to the technology? I'm not too sure, especially in this COVID-19 situation or lockdown situation. If you say that people, there are courts in every city where you can go and give your testimony if at all needed. However, for that also they'll need to travel, and that will also be unsafe for them, or they're putting them in danger. So what I mean to say is, it is not impossible for us to get through witness examination by video conferencing, but there will just be additional challenges that all of us parties concerned and participating will have to be more mindful of. And the courts and the arbitral institutions, even the chambers of commerce who practice ADR, will have to provide technological solutions to be able to reach the witnesses easily. Easy access to technology, whether it is mobile phones, internet, video calling apps in remote interiors of the country also will be needed at times, and that should be done. Some solution has to be created by all the big authority is concerned. Another issue with witness examination is that what if they are being fed by someone else? You will never know because they are not physically present in front of you. What if they are being trained by someone else? So these are questions that will always come in your mind when it comes to witness examination, and it's going to be a tough task to be able to find an appropriate way out for this. So I would again suggest to give utmost importance and paramount importance to your witness statement, which again the lawyers only majorly draft with the help of the witness themselves. So that has to be well drafted for at least to get appropriate justice. Another consideration that I realized for international commercial arbitrations or complicated arbitrations in general is what would happen to transcripts. Will transcribers also join a virtual hearing or a meeting, or do we have inbuilt transcribing softwares in our technology? These are obvious questions that come to mind. A lot of us, especially when we're a part of international commercial arbitrations or complex arbitrations, we rely heavily on transcripts. That is very important for us to receive at the end of every day of the hearing. And if we happen to add transcribers to the hearings, then the technical mishaps that we already discussed might also hamper the transcriber's ability to understand what the arguing counsel is saying. So if there are connection issues, for example, they might not be able to hear what the counsel has said, and in turn will not be able to add the same to your transcript. So we might need an inbuilt transcription software onto these video conferencing apps for us to be able to get clear transcripts. Now, from what I have read and what I believe, we do have such softwares, but are they commercially viable? Whether that can be easily available to everybody, all of us should be prepared and mindful of while we're all practicing social discussing. When we've discussed all of this, we only focused on the problems today. But there are many benefits of online and remote hearings as well. And it's just a matter of time that all parties concerned educate themselves and get themselves adapt to technology. So we'll shift our focus now. This is what I wanted to say. We'll shift our focus now to questions. If at all you have any questions, and how Ujjwal wants to take it, I think you should be able to guide them better.
Yeah, so we have some questions, ma'am.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Ujjwal, I can see someone waiting. Can I just admit some Prasoon Chandra Shukla? Can I just admit him?
No, ma'am, please don't do it. I will discuss upon it later.
Okay, fine. No problem. Yeah.
So, ma'am, just a minute.
Okay, there is a question from Haley, I believe, right? Or
yeah, ma'am, you can
questions, or let's just do that. Can you ask?
Yeah, ma'am, you can take it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Pranav Kemla, he's saying that with respect to witness examination, online hearings may be very risky because during cross-examination, there are risks where a witness can be coached by his or her lawyer to the extent of having the answers appear in the separate screen or a device. Please share your thoughts on it, ma'am.
True, that is an absolute valid concern, and which is what I discussed as well in brief. But that is a concern, and what do we do about it? See, I remember asking certain dignitaries who have been using online arbitration for a while, and what they said is either we send a team to the witnesses from the respondent side, we send a team to the witnesses place from the claimant side, who should be present in the room so that they know. Now, but when we're talking about this, how practical is it during the COVID lockdown times? It is not practical. It's not a practical solution because not everybody can travel. In fact, nobody can travel at this point of time. And we must not travel and must practice social distancing as well. So that is going to be difficult for us. And while we do not have a solution for this, we will have to depend only on the witness statements right now. We can go for witness examination through online many doubts, and there are going to be challenges to that testimony for sure, that we can already preempt.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. So the another question is from Zoya Rahman. How will remote hearings take care of public hearings? In a physical court of law, publics are allowed for a number of cases. In case of remote hearings, how to make such hearings public?
So that is true. And if at all, whether we're ready to be able to, upload these on a website, or say High Court's website only, or the Supreme Court's website only, because arbitrations you are not allowed to anyway. ADR you're not allowed to attend. And not everybody, a crowd is not allowed to attend, because confidentiality plays a main role here. When it comes to like public interest litigations, or things where people really want to, utilize these hearings or learn from the court craft, if there is a certain, like the Supreme Court uses only the video app. If we are allowed to record those hearings in the video app and upload it only on the Supreme Court's website, then nothing like it. That is one technological infrastructure that we need to create. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Another question is from Mr. Shahil M. Shah.
Okay.
He says that resistance from judges or arbitrators who are 50 plus or 60 plus, their resistance is for regular cases after lockdown. If hard copies of paper book are used by judges or arbitrators, their resistance is more to reading the material on the screen rather than hearing arguments on video conferencing.
That's true. And I'm sure they're fine with listening to them, but e-filing is one of the major things, right? All of them are filing, all the files are e-filed. So how do we manage to get printers? Do all the judges have printers at their houses, or are they able to access the websites where the e-filings are being able to, where the e-filings are made? Are they able to access that from their comfortable corners of the home? These are questions that we don't know answers of. So if they're able to print it out from their houses itself, but that also seems, because this is voluminous bundles now, printing day in and day out, how is that going to be possible, or how comfortable will they be? So these are questions, and the resistance is obvious. I understand they've not dealt with this situation, or none of us have dealt with this unprecedented situation until now, and the resistance is obvious. I mean, judges who are above 50 years of age is something different. My own father, who's a lawyer, is very, very, is not adept to technology at all. He himself, as a lawyer, is not taking up cases, or he's not thinking of, ADR right now at all, because he's like, I don't know how to use the technology. So this resistance is going to stay. It's just that they will need to just accept it and be able to adapt to it as soon as possible.
Right, ma'am.
Yeah.
So, and another question is from Mr. Harshal Desai. He asked that how convenient would be online hearings with regard to criminal hearings, especially pertaining to heinous crimes. Also, ma'am, with this question, I would like to address you another question, that how online hearings, how the in-camera proceedings will be affected, and how in-camera proceedings should be conducted along with in this manner.
Actually, Ujjwal, I kind of lost you when you were reading out the question. Where is?
I'll repeat again.
Who has asked this question? If I may read it out myself.
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Who has asked this question?
Harshal Desai.
Harshal Desai, yes. How convenient would be online hearings with regard to criminal hearings, especially pertaining to heinous crimes? I don't think it will be convenient, in my very humble opinion. And especially when it comes to heinous crimes, you just don't. It's anyway you're apprehensive about that person, or the person who's an accused. You're anyway apprehensive about it. But while currently we see that mostly only criminal matters are being taken up, or there are PIs which are being taken up right now, but they're not related to heinous crimes, what I've noticed. I personally would be very apprehensive of going for online hearings for heinous crimes. I will be. I don't think it will be convenient unless that the accused, when it comes to heinous crimes, the accused will already be in jail, is what I am feeling. And so if we have the appropriate infrastructure from the prison itself, like say for example, again I give you the same example for David Headley. They had appropriate infrastructure, the American prison. Similarly, we should also have that. Only then we should go ahead for online hearings pertaining to heinous crimes, or else I think we should just wait it out. Ujjwal, you're muted, Ujjwal.
Yeah, yes,
Ujjwal,
ma'am.
I can't hear you. You're muted.
Yes, ma'am. With this, ma'am, please also deliberate upon the in-camera proceedings. How will they going to be affected?
I think we already touched upon that in-camera proceedings.
Yeah.
It's going to be difficult, in short.
Right, ma'am.
Because we don't have the technology to support that, I feel.
Also, ma'am, how will the lower judiciary will be affected with this? Are they capable of conducting this proceedings online?
See, that's where the technological infrastructure comes again, because lower proceedings, see, like I mentioned, lower court, sometimes hearings are, cases are from people who come from villages. They don't know how to operate a mobile phone, or they don't even own a laptop, putting them to danger. They have to travel. So that is going to be difficult, and we need to develop that technological infrastructure. Are we able to reach each and every village right now where online hearings or virtual hearings will be possible? I believe not. So that is one issue that is going to pertain, and which I have discussed. So we need solutions for that. I'm also up here only to give you an insight about the practical considerations that we already have. Well, I've not thought about the solutions, but I think most of which relates to technology. We need to be technologically adept. That's it.
Yeah, right, ma'am.
Yeah.
And also, ma'am, what about the filings? Like, what will happen to the filings of the case drafting and?
Yeah, that's what. See, like Supreme Court has come up with guidelines about e-filings. Each court has e-filing guidelines, and I discussed in my when I was talking as well that voluminous records, and they don't have enough memory to hold that. I also gave RERA's example where we should take that into consideration, how the RERA platform is operating. Each and every application, what they have is whatever annexure they add, the lawyers also need to, in brief, in so many words, explain what this annexure is about, so that even if there is voluminous bulk of annexures, or even that there is a each and every e-filings need to be done, and in jails they run into several pages. And again, coming back to what Mr. Sai asked, if it runs into several pages, how is the judge stationary, or we have this okay, let's go from below. This is Kushal Shah. Okay, if at all court and high court and even certain commercial courts, I agree, it is possible for us to reduce burden there, for sure. And especially when it comes to commercial disputes, I believe that online dispute resolution is the way to go. But not for lower courts, I do not believe so. There is Pranav's question next. Thanks for enlightening us. With respect to witness examination, online hearings may be very risky because during cross-examination, the risk where a witness can be coached. Did we take question already, Ujjwal? Anna? So I'm not answering this. There's Divyansh Tiwari. In remote hearings, a lot of court time is wasted moving from one case to another. It takes nearly 10 to 15 minutes to transition from one matter to the next and to get the concerned counsels ready on the platform. What can be done in order to prevent such wasted of court time? Hi, Divyansh. Again, very appropriate question, and it will sound repetitive me, but here we go back to technological adeptness. We go back to building the right infrastructure. The less, see, when can you be efficient and speedy in doing anything? When you have the expertise in that. And how do we get the expertise in that? By learning it or by practicing it again and again. So it only goes back to the same foundation that we build on, or that we started this webinar from, which is being technologically adept. You need to know how to, you need to first have an infrastructure which makes things quicker, and you need to have the expertise to be able to efficiently use that. So these are things that go hand in hand. That is the only way that we can allow less wastage of time. Again, now another thing is, why do we waste time here currently, at least, is that because lesser number of judges are also listening to cases. There are lesser number of judges also. If we have simultaneous benches, operating, then maybe we will be able to waste lesser time. That is one consideration that we need to take. But again, it goes back to how efficient you are in handling technology as a country and as individuals, as of the legal community as well. So it goes back to that. There is Zoya Rahman. How will remote hearings take care of public hearings? Okay, this we have, I think we have answered. Then we have, okay, Sahil's question we have answered. We have Chatura's question. Hi, Shalvi. Thank you for the session. How could you scrutinize the credibility of a witness who is not in front of an adjudicator? I think we've answered this question. Scrutinization of any witness and the credibility of witness. I've answered this question thrice, I guess. So I am moving on. Haley has asked a question and just said hello. Hi, Haley. Okay, I think whatever questions were sent to me privately towards the end of the session, right? So anybody else who has questions, or Ujjwal, if you've got any other questions? Okay, there is a chat. Okay, Sakshi is asking, what about drafting of an ODR clause separately? Okay, Sakshi, again, very relevant question there. I don't think there should be a separate drafting of ODR clause. I think the point of having ODR, for people who might not know, ODR is online dispute resolution. All kinds of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms can be shifted online, is what I believe, and that is what is called ODR. We have come up with ODR, or we've come up with ADR for that matter, for convenience sake, for being able to speedily resolve the dispute, being able to be cost effective. So when it comes to ODR clause, let's not focus on drafting a separate ODR clause at all. Let's in fact make it a norm that any ADR clause that we already had can be shifted online if both the parties consent to it. Now, whether that consent can be, like the Arbitration Act also says, the consent can be given through emails or even text messages. That is possible. And all of us are, if we are shifting to online dispute resolution, then we definitely have the access to emails at least. And we can, if both the parties give consent, to shift any ADR mechanism online because of certain circumstances, then we can always convert our ADR clause to an ODR clause and just give consent to that. I don't think we need specific ODR clauses for that. It just adds the burden of being able to manage virtual hearings or being able to manage ODR efficiently. There is another question by Karan. How do we balance privacy, which is of paramount in arbitration matters, keeping in mind issues faced with apps like Zoom? Karan, I again took in fact the same example of Zoom, and I did address this, but for your question, yes, we need confidentiality is of absolute importance. And while right now I'm connected to Zoom and I'm being able to reach you guys through Zoom, but and the government has come out with guidelines, but again it comes back to technological infrastructure. We need to create infrastructure which is not easily hacked, which is strong enough, to be able to handle very many confidential, information that is being, sent through hearings, or whether we are going for e-filing, even that is confidential. So all of this, we need to take care of all of this, like especially how safe Dropbox is for all your filings. And if you're saying that all our entire importance is on your written pleadings, then I don't know how safe it is for me to just upload things on Dropbox, which is easily accessible for everybody. And whether my sensitive information will be compromised, or whether it will not be. These are questions that we will have to, we are in the dark about that, and we need better technological infrastructure and safety for maintaining confidentiality. That is absolutely true. Okay, do you think the judges should be a bit,
last question?
Yeah, do you think the judges should be a bit liberal and allow advocates appearing through video conferencing to discuss a document, or a question by the bench with his co-counsels or client? I think absolutely. Like I said, I addressed this, that, so you will not, the counsels will not have instructions like they generally have during court hearings, or even arbitrations for that matter. What do you do then? They might need more time to take instructions. They might need more time when they're learning about technology to be. They might need more help with regards to sharing a document or showing the screen or anything of that sort. And I think at least for the initial 1 to 3 months, if I can say, the judges will need to be more liberal and give more time, at least 2 to 5 minutes, or give an easy adjournment in that case, for the counsels to take instructions, or for the counsels to be able to use technology appropriately.